Welcome to the Gamification Quest podcast series, where we showcase the voices behind our new collection on gamification and game-based learning, the Sententia Anthology. I'm your host, Monica Cornetti, and in each episode, I sit down with one of our authors to explore the ideas and stories they've brought to life in their chapter. Together, these conversations reveal how creative, passionate professionals are transforming the way adults learn. Let's dive in. Hi, my name is Monica Cornetti, and I am the Game Master for Gamechangers and your host for the Gamification Quest podcast. Now, we're doing a series of special podcasts with our anthology authors. And today, my guest is a friend and colleague who I have learned so much from. His name is Artrell Williams, and his topic, the chapter in our anthology is, If I Can Do It, You Can Do It. And the topic is, his chapter is all about how he went from a prototype to an award-winning training program. So Artrell is one of our Certified Gamification Master Craftsman, and he is the creator of an award-winning game called Taiyazukuri. He won the overall best use of low-tech gamification at TechLearn in 2023, and so won that international award and People's Choice Award for his card game called Taiyazukuri. But since 2008, Artrell has worked across telecommunications, manufacturing, workforce development, helping organizations build leadership capacity, improve retention, and close performance gaps. He's the founder of Mukevä Learning Partners. He's an L&D consultant, and his focus is always on immersion and results-driven solutions. So I loved your chapter, Artrell, because it did have your humor. Your humor really came through. It showed a lot of grit and courage and determination. So thank you so much for being a part of our anthology and being my guest today on the podcast. I'm really glad you're here.
Hey, thanks for having me. It was a great experience, and I appreciate even the opportunity to be able to participate in this.
It really did have a nice spin to it, which was that's the nice thing about an anthology is everybody's voice comes through. And I like that your chapter was different in that it really is you. So as we think about what caused you to decide on that particular topic, as you were thinking about what do I want to write about for the anthology, how did you settle on that topic?
I would have to say imposter syndrome. That I have so much respect for the entire group of authors that have participated in this. And I did not want to try to speak academia or history or any of the other points of view that are represented in this chapter with others that have done this, because I still find myself learning so much about gamification as a whole, learning design. I feel like I'm green. And even though I've been doing it for quite some time, especially as the industry evolves, I know that there's so much more to learn. So the story that I wanted to tell had to do more with my experience going through GameCon all the way to being able to participate in this anthology. It actually brings me full circle from the time that I saw what GameCon was in the training magazine posts for a conference, and then meeting you, the rest of the team, participating in the GameCon experience as a participant, but then going through the 3 levels of Sententia Gamification certification, and then being asked to participate in the throwdown, which I I had no idea that was an option, because that was my first game that I had developed and didn't feel like I even knew enough about gamification to be competing against other people that would do it. But then getting there, seeing such impressive designs by other designers and being recognized by that group of peers as someone who had created something with some viability. Then
Right.
after that, back to the company, they see it, in an international lens and still see viability in it to the point where others took it and I won an award within the organization as well. So then people start asking me questions as if I am a gamification expert, and I was forced to answer those questions. And so somehow the words that resonated through your teachings came out of my face. And now I've encouraged other people, that I've gotten a few other people to come through the certifications too and that are participating, and even have that level of influence where I get to sit in on level 2 and level 3 evaluations. And so I'm giving feedback based on what I've done and what I've heard, but I still find it hard to believe that this has come all the way to the point where now I get to add author to my list of accolades because this group understands what I did and has some appreciation for the way it was done.
It's really good. So well, there's a lot of things that you'll learn about Artrell as you read his chapter. One of those is that he is really good, like the professional networker, not any kind of like he's purposing to be this kind of individual. He's just a natural at it. And one of the things that you do so well is you make those connections. You've introduced me to so many people. And the story I like to tell is that when you started working at that company, you did not know the process of how to make what they were making. And you were in L&D, but then you realized that no one else really knew how to do it either. And that's when you decided this needs to be part of the onboarding. It needs to be part of the experience because everybody knew their individual roles, but didn't see the big picture, which is so essential in onboarding and employee development to have that meaningful work and understand what the company's actually doing. So when I think about you and how you went through the level 2 and you actually created a prototype of that game, and I remember thinking, this has so much potential. And then you did that hard work of putting it in front of people and play testing and play testing and play testing and iterating until it got to the place where it did get recognized for an award. And there's one more thing I want to say there is that when we were in New Orleans in 23 and all those other people were presenting these fantastic programs, and we had it set up after the presentations that people could walk through and talk to the individual designers. I was so thrilled to see how many people were lined up to play your card game, knowing they're never going to have to make what it was you were teaching them, but yet they were still so interested in the gameplay and the game itself that they wanted to play it, which is the sign of a really good learning game, because they're never going to use that per se, but they still were able to understand how fun and engaging that game was. So you say in your chapter that when you walked in to the organization, you felt like you were in an L&D department that was trapped in the 90s. What was your experience there when you first walked in?
I had come from nations and we had resources. So being around people with resources for so long made me believe that everybody had resources. So when I accepted the role with a rubber manufacturer and found out that training was very traditional there. It looked much different than where I had come. And there was a lot of opportunity, which was exciting to me because that's why we work, right? We want to have some validation for what we bring to the table. And I saw so many opportunities to do what I had been doing with the telecommunications provider in this other place. What I didn't anticipate was any type of resistance.
Yeah.
Especially it wasn't even overt resistance. I don't think anybody just said, let's not help this person succeed. I think there was more so, what is he trying to do? That's not how we do things here. We thought that he would just come in and continue doing what the other person had been doing. I didn't know what the other person had been doing because there was no real handoff. So I just kind of picked up what I saw on the ground and started training managering.
Yeah, that's good. And I like that. I don't think like they're like resisting you and your ideas. It just like, that's not the way we do it. And
Mhm.
the country, the culture of the company, having been from overseas, it's very traditional culturally. So we do things this way. This is the right way. This is the polite way. This is we do what people before us said to do, and we keep following that. We carry that torch. And then you go in and you say, well, I don't know, we'll try this differently. And I know at first, like the feedback was, well, let's see, because I know I wrote some letters and recommendations, and then they were even looking at perhaps like translating this. I still think that, maybe you're just about 20 years too far ahead, that they're just not ready for all of that change. People like to do things the way they've been done. But you mentioned earlier here about coming to GameCon. And if I remember, I think you were like ready to leave after about the first couple hours, because it was the first time we had been live in, I don't know, 3 or 4 years. And a lot of people had input into the design and the gameplay. And we might have possibly have gone further than maybe we should have. We were like almost Comic-Con, right? Like people were in costumes, they were becoming their characters. We had wizards, we had role playing, we had scrolls and magic wands, and it was really pretty far out there, especially if you've never been exposed or haven't been to a Comic-Con before. If you've not been to a place where you're like, what are we doing here? I thought this was a more traditional learning conference. So what was going through your mind?
Really, I still haven't unpacked that. To expect, as you mentioned, I really didn't know. And in hindsight, I think you guys did it perfectly. For me, it had to have been perfectly because it's brought me to where I am. I just had no idea that that could be part of the process, that immersion could not only be just I guess I experienced content immersion before, but you guys immersed us in the narrative. You immersed us in all of the teachings, and it took me a little while to say, wait a minute, what they've been doing, all of this immersion is not just theatrics. They are demonstrating the things that they're teaching us through this player journey that you had put up there. So as we looked at the pirate tales and you introduced us to mechanics, we were using mechanics in a live environment. Um, Gamification to me at that time was what it was to many, many people still: points, badges, leaderboards. So that's kind of what I was expecting. And maybe I would have gotten what I had expected if the GameCon description said, let's show you how to do more points, badges, and leaderboards. Just that, I would have gotten there and be like, all right, I get to do that Jeopardy game, but now somebody can show me how to actually design my own version of it. All right, we get to do the whole racing and bars and all of that stuff, and I can design it for my own place. So to get there and not see points at all, or leaderboards. That, I guess it was in the Blue Rabbit app too, but it wasn't like the race to the finish line. You guys had a table in the back, and it wasn't about who did the most, would all win all of the prizes or whatever. Everybody got to partake. So I mentioned in the chapter that everything was gone by the time I got there. I could have partaken, but I didn't get on board until like halfway through the second day, whereas others who were laggards too had still taken enough effort to go to the table and pick something out. And it wasn't until day two where I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, that's how you get to do this stuff? Like I keep answering questions which were relevant to the content that you guys were teaching us. I can go to the board in the back of the room and participate that way. I can participate by going and speaking to people over here. I can participate through the Blue Rabbit app that you had been using. So there were so many different ways to participate. And in many learning situations, you only get one way, right? You do the one thing that they tell you to do, and you succeed in that one way. And if you get there first, then you get the biggest prize. And there might be a second and a third, but it stops at a certain point. But you had so many offerings back there. And I remembered you saying that the gifts should be tied to the game. So don't just give out some other random thing. It's like you weren't giving out Snicker bars. You were giving out really relevant and tangible items that we could use for that experience and where you wanted us to take that experience, which was back at the job. And
Yeah.
that was what was to me.
And I guess that comes from a lot of that is, we talk about at Sententia, we talk about self-hugging. So when we think about the resource table, I just think about valuable tools. What can I use back at work? I can use this deck of cards. I can use that book. I can use this framework. These are going to help me be better at my job. I could use some earbuds, sure, to listen at work, but winning some AirPods is stuff more so than resources that are really, really going to help me advance in my skills, which is what we always try to do. Like we'll certainly do we have some great, really fun decoder bands coming up for GameCon. And because we have a whole mystery, we have two separate kind of mystery games happening behind the event of 48 hours of GameCon. And so people will have a chance to play and have fun, but they'll really, really just end up competing against yourself, right? You just are looking to see, how much am I learning? What am I taking back with me? How can I apply this in real life to what I'm designing? And that's what's really most important as we think about learning about gamification design. I always say the best way to learn it is to do it. And so unless we jump in and try it, we have theory, but we have no skill, because we have to try it and fail and then see, oh, well, that did, okay, what do we have to do differently? How do we keep moving on that? But you really jumped in with both feet. You were right there with it. I didn't see you, although you told us later, like you were ready to go, maybe after the first morning, but I didn't see that. That wasn't evident. What I saw was Artrell really leaning into what the table was doing, what we were learning, our after hours events. I saw you doing all of that, which again comes back to who you are. You're not one to just kind of hang back and let somebody else see what happens and then you'll come along. To me, you're always right at the front of the pack, leading the way, trying things out, which is a really great trait. Maybe not everybody appreciates that in your life. I don't know. But as you think about the story and the idea that sparked your whole award-winning card game, did that come from something you were playing already?
It came from something that I sat down to play just to break the monotony of life. I just needed something to do because I was stressed, and I'm like, you know what? You've been working really hard. Go ahead and give the kids some time this weekend. And we sat down and we played Sorry. And we were moving those pawns around. I wanted to take inspiration from a game that I had seen at the previous year's Throwdown. I think the guy worked for like the water authority or the sewer system or something like that. And he had
Yeah.
it was with some rooms on
Uh,
it.
John Caulfield, yes, for the water authority. Yes. Uh-huh.
So I remembered that, and I went into the website and I looked at it several times, trying to get a sense of what that was all about. But what impressed me was that it was low tech, no tech. So he had put together a board design-ish, and you would move pieces around physically in the space that he had created on that sheet. So as I moved around the board on Sorry, it just hit me. This is what you should be doing. You don't have to create digital stuff that you don't know how to create. This is a game that you're enjoying playing. Everybody's sitting here having fun. How can you turn this into something that teaches people? And I took that model and then started to pick apart what I needed at work. I needed them to understand waste. The reason that we were creating the waste was because people didn't understand the flow. So, can we create an experience which shows the flow and then teaches them how to navigate that flow so that they understand how the dots connected? And it came together from there. I threw out some ideas to other people who happened to understand the vision. And then we started picking apart other games. Because I remember one of the activities that you had us do is deconstruct a couple games. That you gave us games and we played it for the purpose of understanding what was there, what made it fun, what made it engaging, and what we took away from that experience. So as I picked apart those things with Sorry, and then started to look at Rummy and Uno and Monopoly and their elements, you'll see that's all over the game Taiyazukuri, that I picked from those places for inspiration and was able to put together something that people enjoy.
That's really good. And that's what, when we talk about gamification, I always say, like, you don't have to be this gamer to be able to apply gamification. It really helps, though, to play different types of games. I'm not saying you have to spend 6 hours a day or have a game night each week, but try different games, see what's fun, see how did they use that? How did they use the currency? How did they use the dice? How did they use the movement around the board? What was this rule? What was a slowdown? How were there any like cheats, not like cheating, but like what were some shortcuts you could possibly take? What did that mean to you as a person professionally? Like when you saw your game there at TechLearn, and then there was talk about taking it to Japan and being recognized in the company, what did that mean to you as a both as a person and then also professionally?
It was motivating. It makes me want to share gamification with others. And it's one of the things that I've been doing lately in having people create. That's what we like to do as human beings is create. And as adult learners, we already have a certain amount of knowledge coming in. So when they go to a training class, most people, even though they expect for someone to regurgitate information, that's not what they come there for. And when we can put them in a position to where they can also create and we show them what they can create, then that's where they're really able to apply the learnings that they have. Because we're just contextualizing it. We're taking things that in many instances they already know, but helping them understand how to apply it to the behaviors that we need for them to drive the results. So anyway, I felt great. And hopefully it comes through in the chapter where I shared it with some people, they got excited, then they shared it with some people, those people came, they gave us additional ideas, then we all got excited all over again. We hit some low points, and then breakthroughs happened, and we got excited again. So you got this roller coaster thing, and you've read it. I am very conscious of the fact that I'm going to love it because that's self-hugging. Really excited.
Well, but you also, when you spend that much time on something, I always like to think, well, I don't want to work with a client that I don't respect the type of work they're doing. Like if I had a real, like some kind of personal, I would not enjoy that, right? And we spend so much time in the design, and we dream about it. We're talking about it when we're having lunch, and you play test it. So it's good that you liked it. It's good that it reflected, I think, the fun of you also in this manufacturing setting, that these are serious people, they're doing serious work, but the game was fun. It was really fun to play. Yeah, that's good. Where do you see that? Do you, as you think about like that manufacturing type setting, do you see a space for more gamification and game-based learning in that type of environment?
They need it. the generation of entry-level employees that are coming into that workforce have been playing games all their lives. And the difference between my generation and their generation is that games came about. Like, there were very basic games when I got here on this earth, but my dad wasn't playing those games, and we weren't playing those games together. I got an Atari, and even before that, like a Commodore 64, and that was just a thing that the kids had access to while dad worked, and it took the pressure off of people who had to attend to you during the course of the day because they knew you were in the living room.
Yes,
But
yes.
now we've got this generation of people who the dads and moms have been playing the video games with the kids since the kids were kids. The parents were playing video games before the kids even came about. So that's the language that they speak. And when we can speak that language with them, because I get frustrated when leaders are like, oh, this generation, they like to do this and they're lazy. Maybe we're the lazy ones for not trying to appeal to their preferences. We are the ones that want and need them to do things for us. So to call them lazy because they don't want to do it the way we want them to do it is not really fair. They're way more savvy. I wanted to say smarter, and I paused because sometimes people say they're smarter, but they're definitely more savvy than we were when it comes to the technology. There's a curve for all of that stuff. So they've jumped in at a point in the curve where we weren't at their age. So you got to expect that a 7-year-old knows how to use a mobile phone and download apps and break into your passwords and all that good stuff. They are. So how can we leverage that? How can we leverage what we know is their interest and a preferred method of learning? And gamification helps us to be able to do that. And we're not talking about video games every time. We're not even talking about fun every time. We're just talking about tactile experiences that leverage what they bring to the table. They already know how to do this. Like, honestly, we had to develop that skill. We started out with the joystick, and that's all we had to play the game. They put a button on one side of the joystick, and then it evolved, and eventually we got an arrow thing over here and some 4 buttons over here, and then it evolved, and now you got 2 sticks on each side with buttons up at the top. And they know these things. So if we understand that their brains are working using those skills, manipulating their bodies that way, why don't we leverage that by allowing them to do that as we're helping them to learn the things that we need them to know? And if we do that effectively, then we'll get a lot more out of that generation that we can sometimes be so frustrated with.
Mm-hmm.
We can help be
Yeah.
even better at what we want them to be.
Well, yeah, we hear a lot of negative of that. They're lazy, they're entitled, and they just have led life differently, like you say. And they've had uh, their access has been totally different. They've not lived where they only got information when we believed they were ready for it. They've been able to access any information they've wanted basically their whole life. They just had to go get it, and it was there. So how can we use that? And I like that idea that maybe it's us that we are comfortable categorizing and labeling them. What if we turn that around and look at it from the other side? Like, what can we do differently instead of expecting them just to come our way? But I know that we have huge knowledge gaps that we have to close between people who are leaving companies because they're aging out and new young workforce is coming in. And there's a lot of gap to close there. I think the bad reputation or the bad impression is that game-based learning or gamification is just about fun, and we can't have fun. And meantime, I have some really challenging problems I have to solve as far as design. And I think that'll be fun when I figure that out. That's not anything to do with laughing or comedy or right. It's hard work. And then it's when you figure it out and you figure out how it's going to get there, then that's a lot of fun. And so I think we give it a bad reputation when it doesn't really deserve that. But I think it's the only box people can find to put it in. Well, it's a game, so you must be messing around. You must not be serious if you're playing a game, rather than, well, maybe they're really solving problems. And this is the right way to approach it to solve that problem. That's really good. What would you say if you think about your chapter? If people were going to tell somebody else, hey, I read this anthology and Artrell's chapter really, I just got me thinking different. What would be that one idea you'd really want people to walk away with after reading your chapter?
Hopefully they understand just how deliberate that type of experience needs to be, that it can be deliberate in a way that creates the fun. And the way you described the fun just a moment ago, it made me think about golf. People don't laugh and smile when they play. Even the people in the stands aren't laughing and smiling at what's happening.
Yeah.
They're having fun. And they're having fun because there's a cerebral element to it, and they're solving the problem. They're using their physical body mechanics in a way that gets them to the goal. And then it becomes fun. There's the competition piece of it, but they're not only competing against one another, but they've set that format up to where they're competing against themselves too. And they're competing against people who did it before. So even if you're number one on today's leaderboard, and you could be 14 under for those who appreciate some type of golf analogy, you think about the guy who last year was 16 under. And so you keep playing even harder because even though you may be way ahead of the field that's competing right now, but there was somebody who did it better than you did 2 years ago or 5 years ago. And you constantly hear them chasing, probably more so than any other sport. They're chasing what's happened in the past because what the golfers today are trying to do is beat what Tiger Woods did or Jack Nicklaus did. And this was now, like, I'm with Tiger Woods and I'm history. Tiger Woods,
Yeah.
he's there, but he's like, they're talking about me like I'm gone.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
the board. And so when we create experiences in which people can still compete, not just against the other people who are there right then, but something that has made them better or that has done better and will continue to do better over time. That's what we want to do. And the chapter talks about how I came together with a team of people. And I hate that if I can do it is so cliche because it almost implies that I did it by myself. And it's definitely not. And the chapter illustrates that. But the cliche is catchy. And I wanted to title it that way so that people know and understand that they don't have to know a lot about gamification, that they could show up to a conference and almost want to walk out, that they could be completely confused for like the whole first half of the experience. It doesn't happen right away. But as you practice those skills, as you apply the learning and you start to see how you can apply it in your own space, it can be fun. And then when you design something deliberately and other people get it and they start to catch on and give you additional ideas. And one thing that really was just supposed to be almost like matching turns into something that you would relate to Uno, Monopoly, the elements that are there. There's a lot of deliberateness there. And that die that we use,
Mm-hmm.
it's got icons on there that were interesting for us to use. I'm on one of them, right? And to be able to do the research and go to a website and say, hey, it lets us put custom images on there. Why don't we use one of these images, right? Images that are more relevant because the die just got little dots on them. But what if we could make those dots something from our environment? What if we could make one side of the die Monica Cornetti? And when you start to do those types of things, I learned probably more about tire manufacturing as I was creating that experience than I had by sitting down and reading books about it or going out on the shop floor. So when we engage at that level as creators, And I encourage every other designer to put the participant in the creator role at some point. When we do that, then we're solidifying the learning. And if we have designed deliberately based on the business outcomes that we're trying to achieve, everybody wins.
Yeah, that's really good. And there's a really great video, I use it a lot, that Artrell had. It's kind of like a trailer of the game, and he shows how, the rolling of the dice and the different categories in the cards, and how you get a build, which means you can put something in the warehouse, and the surprise and the delight on people's face, like, wait, hey, I got a build, right? Like, they understood themselves, the process then, which goes back to learning more by playing the card game than if we had sat them down with a 3-ring binder and said, read this, and then we're going to give you a 20-question multiple choice quiz to see how much you really know, which doesn't show anything. But they understood the process from playing the game, which is very, very cool. So I think you should feel really good about your design, and I look forward to see what happens next, where you go next. So thank you so much for being a part of the anthology. I think your story really tells us that people often get hung up on the technology. Well, I don't know technology. And I've always been a huge fan of low tech, no tech, because to me, give me 4 things in my office and tell me I have to make a game out of it. And I could probably figure out a game that we could play that would be engaging and teach something and have that sense of loss or gain or negotiating or whatever we're trying to do. So it reminds us that it takes some creativity and courage, and maybe that grit to just hang in there and not be dissuaded by anybody who says, I don't know, a card game to teach that process, I'm just not sure. But if you know that you know that you know what we've been doing isn't working, and our learners deserve better, so let's give them better, then we can really start getting into that creative arena of giving our learners more personalized, really for them, help them to be successful. Artrell, thank you so much. It was a delightful chapter. Thank you for being here with me on the podcast. Thank you for taking time from your busy, busy schedule to be here. And I look forward to seeing you in New Orleans as one of our speakers. And I look forward to people responding to your chapter in the same way that I did. Just this delightful addition to the whole idea of bringing gamification and game-based learning into our adult program. So thank you so much, Artrell. Really appreciate you.
Thanks again for having me. I appreciate that opportunity once again. And I told you, I've got tremendous respect for all of the other authors in the book, but now I do know that my chapter is going to be somebody's favorite chapter. I hate to use the word best, but I can assure you that my chapter will be somebody's favorite chapter. And hopefully that's somebody who's listening right now.
That's really good. I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Gamification Quest podcast series. If you'd like to go deeper, you can get your own copy of the Sententia Anthology, where you'll find all of our authors' chapters collected in one place. Simply go to www.sententiagamification.com/anthology. And if you're ready to take the next step in your own practice, visit our homepage at www.sententiagamification.com to explore our certification programs and our community of practice. Until next time, keep designing learning that engages and transforms.